Thank you, Ms. Lee, for that very eloquent statement. I wonder if you remember, you might be too young for this, but when there was this horrific assault, a gang rape in Central Park, Donald Trump ran ads in the New York Times saying that the Central Park suspect should be given the death penalty, and of course they turned out to be completely innocent of the offense. So I think that's just to reinforce your point. There's a history of profound racism in the criminal justice system and in the rhetoric around it, and there's something very disappointing about our colleagues co-opting, as you say, and prostituting the critique of the system as two-tiered on behalf of Donald Trump. I yield back to you.
Chair recognizes Mr. Groffman from Wisconsin for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this important hearing. I found it interesting that of the 12 witnesses the FBI and the IRS wanted to interview on December 8, 2020, including Hunter Biden, they only got one interview. That was Rob Walker, a friend of the Biden family, and whose company, Robinson Walker, LLC, sent millions of dollars to the Bidens that originated in Romania and China. President Biden said his family didn't receive money from China, but that wasn't true. Mr. Shapley, according to your testimony before Ways and Means on page 18 on December 3rd, 2020, did you have a long meeting with the prosecution team at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Delaware?
That's correct, on December 3rd, 2020.
And is it true that U.S. Attorney Weiss was in and out of that meeting?
Yes, that's true.
And during the meeting, did you share your plan to interview Hunter Biden's associate, Rob Walker?
All the interview outlines for the witnesses were discussed that day, yes.
Okay. And you wanted to question Walker about the email that said 10 held by H for the big guy. Is that correct?
That was included in the interview outline, yes.
Okay. But U.S. Attorney Leslie Wolf told you she did not want you to ask questions about Dad, meaning Joe Biden. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So Assistant U.S. Attorney General Wolf was, you felt, conceding that the big guy was Joe Biden. Do you think that's accurate?
I mean, I don't want to conclude what she was thinking.
Okay. You did have an interview with Rob Walker in Arkansas, correct?
I did not, but agents did, yes.
Okay. And did Rob Walker tell you that President Biden had ever showed up to a meeting with his son's business associates?
He told us that he had shown up at the meetings, yes.
Okay. Can you elaborate on that at all?
I can only stick to what's in the transcript, and the witness described an instance where CEFC executives were, or people involved in CEFC were meeting at the Four Seasons, and that the subject's father, President Biden, showed up at that meeting.
So President Biden was there physically?
That's what the witness said, yes.
Okay. Mr. Ziegler, maybe I'm going back here a little bit further, but earlier today, you wanted to elaborate on one of your questions, and you were cut off by one of the Democratic congressmen. Is there anything that you want to say that you could remember that you weren't able to say?
I appreciate that. So I wanted to say that one thing that was mentioned regarding the retired FBI supervisory special agent, I've actually recently reached out to some of my former colleagues that I worked this investigation with at the FBI, and I've asked them, was there anything I misstated in my transcript? They said no, from their best understanding of reading it. So I want to be clear on that they've read my transcript, or they've referenced that they did, and that they've said that they didn't see any issues with what I said in my transcript.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Shapley, anything else from you?
Yeah, I want to speak briefly about our criminal tax attorneys at IRS Criminal Investigation. So first, they're only advisory, and you know, I can't recall an instance where they non-concurred with any of my actions and within the group, and that we didn't send it forward anyway through our, you know, with our senior leadership approval. The issue here was the manner in which it became a non-concur. The line CT attorney, who took more than 50 days to review all the evidence, she concurred with all of the charges in that prosecution report. This is Exhibit 2. When she sent it forward, a panel of 5 of lawyers at the National Office of Criminal Tax Attorneys, they concurred with the line attorney's assessment that it was a concur on all of the charges that were recommended. It then went to the senior leadership at CT Council, and the top said that you need to change this to a non-concur. So that even something like that could happen in practice. The issue here was that I contacted the line attorney's manager, the area council, and I said that this was going to be, we didn't know this was going to be a non-concur. She's been saying it's going to be a concur, and she told us that it had always been a non-concur, basically obfuscating the entire events that occurred at the senior levels, with the panel agreeing with the law and recommending concurring those charges. So I don't know why CT Council would lie to us or provide false information about it being a non-concur the whole time. And Special Agent Ziegler had some communication with that line attorney and said, do you know that they are saying that it's always been a non-concur? And she confirmed, she said, what? No, I sent a yellow light, which is a concur. And so that was the issue with CT Council that really perplexed me. And that's something that I wanted to add to the congressman back there. So thank you for the extra time.
Thank you. And just one other thing, I think with regard to what happened in Central Park years ago, the mischaracterization of what happened there is, I'm sure, very hurtful and harmful to the Central Park jogger. I wish you wouldn't have. There's more to that story, and you know very well. Thank you.
Very good. At the request of the witnesses, we're going to take 2 more questioners, and then we'll have another 10-minute recess. So I'll just recognize Mr. Kassar and then Mr. Donalds. Right now, Chair recognizes Mr. Kassar from Texas for 5 minutes.
It's clear from this hearing that Democrats are pro-accountability, equal treatment under the law, and for paying your taxes. In the Hunter Biden case, we've heard that the Trump-appointed U.S. attorney took the extensive work of the IRS investigation and got the most severe penalty that he thought was possible, and he was held accountable. But there are so many millionaires and billionaires and big corporations that are never held accountable for tax evasion. And in fact, they are shielded by this GOP majority. Republicans are not interested in that kind of accountability. Instead, they're interested in trying their hardest to embarrass the president and prevent our government from operating as it should. If Republicans were truly interested in holding the powerful accountable, we would be holding hearings on making sure the IRS has the resources to investigate every billionaire and every big corporation who cheats on their taxes. But instead, the first bill that I voted on, the first bill brought forward by this Republican majority, was to slash funding dedicated to the IRS in order to chase down billionaire tax cheats. That would have brought us more revenue for us to, if we spend some money on the IRS to chase down tax cheats, that would have brought ultimately more revenue to the United States and reduced our deficits and improved programs for the American people. A 2021 Treasury Department paper found that the wealthiest 1% may owe more than $160 billion in uncollected taxes. According to the New York Times, quote, tax compliance rates are high. Tax compliance rates are high for low and middle income workers who have their taxes deducted automatically from their paychecks. The rich, however, are able to use accounting loopholes to shield their tax liabilities. So I'd like to reiterate, low and middle income Americans have high tax compliance rates. They pay their taxes. It is the very wealthiest and the biggest corporations who refuse to pay their fair share and rig the system here in D.C. in their favor. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm interested in whether you could commit in short order to holding a hearing about holding billionaires and big corporations accountable for evading their taxes. I think this could be a bipartisan hearing. It could result in reductions to the deficit. And if we have interest in holding folks accountable on tax evasion, I think we should be looking at the biggest fish we can across the board.
We're starting here today.
No, but we're having a hearing about accountability. But what I want to know is why it is folks have voted for cutting billions of dollars in order to let folks off the hook. So I'd be interested, if we could have a hearing on the fact that the IRS has lost to attrition thousands of employees, including those with sophisticated skills. It used to be that 41,000 audits happened a year for millionaires. That was 10 years ago. But in fiscal year 2020, the IRS only audited 11,000 millionaire returns. Only about 7,100 of those returns were audited by revenue agents who are the most highly qualified auditors. So I want to know, Mr. Chairman, can we have a hearing? I think this is something we could all get behind. Have a hearing about billionaires and big corporations at large scale, potentially getting away with, from latest reports, we're talking about $160 billion in uncollected taxes. I would like to see whether there might be interest from anybody on the other side of the aisle on us having that kind of a hearing. Any interest? Really, I have over a minute of time. Mr. Sessions, that'd be great. I think that would be a good hearing for us to have. Yeah, we want everybody to follow the law. I agree. And with that, I yield back my time to the ranking member.
Will you yield?
We'll yield to the gentleman from New York.
Thank you. I appreciate the gentleman from Texas yielding. I want to bring up that October 7th meeting real quick in just the minute we have. You're familiar with an October 6th Washington Post story entitled "Federal Agency Chargeable Tax Gun Purchase Case Against Hunter Biden." Is that right? Mr.
Yes, I'm
Shapley?
familiar,
Yeah.
yes.
And then this meeting occurred October 7th, the day after this, right?
That's correct.
Was this article discussed at that meeting?
It was.
And what was the nature of the discussion?
It's in that document, that email that basically says that we got to keep the sphere small, and that.
So it was pretty
who was
clear,
gonna
though, you would agree it was pretty clear that this was a leak to the Washington Post by law enforcement agents, since it describes what federal agents believe, right?
So it wasn't actually clear to me that it was, because usually they'll say that it's a law enforcement source that provided it. If you see in the bottom, it says that they corroborated independently, and they did not mention law enforcement.
And
So you don't think it's the federal the agents who leaked this, when the headline says federal agents see chargeable tax gun purchase case against Hunter Biden?
Gentlemen, time's expired, but feel free to answer the question.
So prior to that, if you go back to December of 2020, there was another leak to the Washington Post that we had to get Department of Justice OIG involved, TIGA involved, so there was other leaks that happened prior to this to the Washington Post that I think are important for us to understand as well in that situation.
They had similar information as the
Yeah.
October 6th leak.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Donalds from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the witnesses, thank you for being here today. I want to get right to it because we have a lot to cover. Mr. Ziegler, you are the agent that opened up this investigation. From your transcript, page 17, what it says is that you were investigating a social media company, and through the process of that investigation, you found out that Hunter Biden was paying potentially for prostitutes in a potential prostitution ring. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. You also say that in the beginning phases of that investigation, reviewing bank reports, that there was evidence that he was living lavishly through his corporate bank account. Is that correct? And when I say him, I mean Hunter Biden. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Question for you, and also for Mr. Shapley. Is it a clear line of potential investigation if somebody is charging up massive living expenses through a corporate account and not doing that through their own personal accounts and not accounting for that properly on their income tax returns? Is that the basis of a criminal investigation?
Generally speaking, that would definitely be factors that would spur a criminal investigation, yes.
Okay. Let me ask you this question. Real quick. So there was reference to the WhatsApp text message referring to, and everybody knows it now, hey, I'm sitting here with my dad, tell the chairman to give me my money because we remember, and we're not going to forget because we're the Bidens and we have all these connections, yada, yada, yada. We all know that text message now. Mr. Ziegler, on page 105 of your testimony, page 105, gentlemen, you state, I know we wanted to get location data because I went to the prosecutors with this, and they again came back at me with, well, how do we know that? He could just be lying and claiming that dad, Joe Biden now, that dad was there and dad was not there. Were you allowed to get location data dealing with the WhatsApp text message?
So from my memory of it and from the notes that were taken, I never obtained location data regarding that message.
Did Miss Wolf, the AUSA in Delaware, did she say, "Oh wow, look at this text message. Let's figure out the location data and see where Hunter Biden was when he sent said message"? Was she like excited about this as a prosecutor?
So, I mean, when I asked her about the location data, in her response right here, it was her responding with, well, how do we know that? It wasn't, yeah, let's try and figure that out. It was like, well, how do we know that?
Well, did she read the text message? Because if I read that text message as a prosecutor, I'm saying, wait a minute, Dad is sitting next to him and Dad happens to be the now president, then vice president of the United States. Shouldn't we find out where Hunter was when he sent said text message? I mean, I'm not a prosecutor, I'm a finance guy, but that just seems like common sense to me.
Yeah, and I think with the previous email that was referenced, 10 held by H for the big guy, now that you have those two things kind of correlating with each other, as a normal process or procedure that we would go through, you would want to figure out, is that information truthful in that WhatsApp message?
I totally agree with you, Mr. Ziegler, which is why I think it is the view of members on this committee, and frankly a lot of Americans at this point, that there are elements at the Department of Justice who did not want this information out, who did not want to go down the line of actually going through the evidence gathering process to see the depths to which this international pay-for-play scheme that was actually happening around Joe Biden, going through Hunter Biden, and all the money that the Biden family was incurring. That's not a question for you, that's just a statement from me. Last question, through your investigation, how much money did you uncover was coming from Ukraine, Romania, and China?
If you hold on one second, let me reference the 17.3 million approximately.
Okay, so 17.3 million through your investigation, and you and Mr. Shapley, you are the guys that investigate criminal tax evasion on an international scale, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, question for the chairman. Mr. Chairman, through the investigation of the Oversight Committee, about how much money have we seen come from Ukraine, Romania, and China?
Over 10 million.
Okay, so we have two separate investigations. One done by the investigative branch of the IRS that is charged with doing these types of investigations. These are the people you want doing them. And an independent investigation by the Oversight Committee. And we're coming up with the same amount of money, give or take a couple million, going through the same person in Hunter Biden. And his investigation is slow walked. And we're supposed to sit here and think that Joe Biden knows nothing? I think, for the record, Mr. Chairman, that the relevant committee needs to have questions for Leslie Wolf, the AUSA of Delaware, for David Weiss, the Attorney General of Delaware, for Lisa Monaco, who is the Deputy Attorney General, and for Merrick Garland himself, the Attorney General of the United States. Because if this action is allowed to occur, and investigations are slow walk with this level of detail, this ain't Donald Trump, y'all. These are facts. I yield back.
Thank you. Great job. And I will add, we just got bank records for Ukraine. So we'll be going through that. At the request of the witnesses, we're going to recess for 10 minutes, and then we'll promptly reconvene.